After the sudden death of his fiancée, Jamal developed intense fears about driving, nightmares that left him gasping for breath, and a compulsion to avoid people. His reactions became so severe he could no longer work. His grief had escalated into debilitating emotional and physical symptoms. Welcome to this mini-series on understanding the language of grief, loss, and trauma. My name is Nathalie Himmelrich. I'm a somatic practitioner, psychological therapist, educator, and author, specializing in grief and trauma, and the host of the How to Deal with Grief and Trauma podcast. Grief and trauma are deeply human experiences, yet many of us struggle to describe what we are going through or to understand what others are facing. The vocabulary of loss is vast, varied, and sometimes overwhelming. In this short podcast episode series, we'll explore the different types of grief, loss, and trauma that people encounter throughout life. Each mini-episode serves both as an educational tool and a compassionate companion for anyone trying to make sense of their own experience with grief, loss, and trauma, or someone who is supporting someone else who is. These terms are more than labels. They are doorways into greater understanding, healing, and connection. Whether you are a bereaved parent, a caregiver, a therapist, or someone walking alongside a grieving friend or someone who has experienced trauma, these bite-sized episodes aim to give you language, insight, and tools. Each one includes a definition, some key considerations, an explanation of why it matters, relevant podcast episodes, and frequently asked questions that I have been asked by my clients and you, the listener of the podcast. And my answers are all grounded in both professional and lived experience. So let's begin. Exaggerated grief includes overwhelming responses to loss that may involve phobias, panic attacks, nightmares, substance use, or other destructive behaviors. It goes beyond typical emotional pain, manifesting in ways that significantly impair daily life and may resemble trauma or mental illness. This kind of grief is often triggered by sudden, violent, or deeply traumatic losses. The nervous system becomes overwhelmed, and the person's ability to process the grief in a manageable way is disrupted. The symptoms may seem out of proportion to outsiders, but they reflect the intensity of the emotional trauma. Recognizing exaggerated grief helps prevent misdiagnosis and ensures the person gets the appropriate support. Without it, individuals may spiral into self-destructive behaviors or develop secondary mental health issues. Early recognition and trauma-informed grief support are key to helping the person find safety and begin healing. I have yet to speak with someone for the podcast How to Deal with Grief and Trauma on the topic of exaggerated grief. As you might imagine, this form of grief is not one where people easily feel encouraged to speak openly about it. If you know someone who would be open to speak about this topic, let them know about the podcast. It might be someone whose grief resembles PTSD, someone who is coping with violent loss, or people returning to risk behavior or substance use after loss. So here are some of the questions asked. Is exaggerated grief a mental illness? Not necessarily, but it can overlap with anxiety disorders, PTSD, or substance use disorders, and often requires professional care. So what is the difference between intense grief and exaggerated grief? Intense grief is part of a normal mourning process. Exaggerated grief significantly disrupts functioning and may involve, as I said, phobic, compulsive, or harmful behaviors. So can therapy help? Yes, but importantly, it needs to be trauma-informed therapy with a grief-literate therapist, and it can be an effective way to help people with exaggerated grief regulate their nervous system and process their emotions. Does this mean I'm grieving wrong? No, grief is not wrong. Your nervous system may simply be overwhelmed, and certain nervous systems are prone to be easily and quickly overwhelmed. So there is no shame in needing support. What are the signs of exaggerated grief? As mentioned, panic attacks, nightmares, avoiding reminders, intrusive images, compulsions, or turning to alcohol or drugs. Is it possible to prevent exaggerated grief? Not entirely, but having a strong support system and early intervention can reduce the intensity. Can exaggerated grief affect physical health? Yes. Chronic stress can affect sleep, digestion, immunity, and overall well-being. So what helps most? As I mentioned, grounding techniques, nervous system regulation, trauma processing, and compassionate support from professionals and loved ones. In the next episode, I'll be speaking about residual grief. I hope this episode has helped you feel more grounded in the language of loss, grief, or trauma, and maybe even offered you some clarity, validation, or insight into your own experience or the experience of someone you care about. Grief and trauma are deeply personal, yet universal. When we can name what we're feeling, we take one powerful step closer to healing and the integration of our experience back into our lives. If this series resonates with you, I invite you to keep exploring. You'll find more resources, courses, and ways to work with me at nathaliehimmelrich.com. And of course, you're always welcome to revisit any of the episodes whenever you need a gentle reminder that you're not alone. Until next time, take good care of your heart.